Hi guys, I am DM Zone. This is Gamers Oasis. Let's get into it. So, we're going to jump into another video talking about exploration. In this particular one, I'm going to be sharing how there are certain things that were used in original Dungeons and Dragons that could be used in any version of the game to improve your game experience when you're traveling, when you're out in the wild, when you're out in the unknown. And what I'm going to really draw upon with this is people talk about Jack Vance, how the Vancian magic was the type of magic that basically was used in original Dungeons and Dragons, and then from there on. And that's true, but it's more than that. There's also Three Hearts, Three Lions talking about alignment and this type of stuff. And both of these have a lot to do with like the way the world was built, the way they viewed the game, the way they viewed these battles. Like if you're a Kugel getting lost as a wizard teleports you across the world, you have no idea where you're going. And now you have to basically explore on your way back. Well, that is literally the saga of Kugel. I mean, there's more to it than that. It's like 3 books, I guess, or 2 books, really. But you get the general idea. The overworld and then the saga of Kugel. But anyways, and that's all Jack Vance. So they came out with this one here, Outdoor Survival. And this had a very similar type of thing. It wasn't fantasy. It was a realistic thing. But it played a very heavily part into the being lost. Lost was literally the first scenario. There's 5 scenarios. I'm going to go into a video where I talk more about that. It's either come out or it's coming out. And I'm going to talk about another video where I talk about how original Dungeons and Dragons is not that. And sort of how you use that in your game, but not necessarily exactly how I'd use it in my game, shall we say. But that's a board game. This box came out in 1972. It's my copy. I bought this off of, I want to say eBay. It wasn't terribly expensive. Was good to have. I've learned a lot from it. There are PDFs of the rules out there if you're wanting to understand the rules without having to have a physical copy of the game. There's plenty of counters and all that type of stuff. The maps are a bit interesting, but there's a lot of hex maps out there. Anyways, let's get into this a little bit. So in this world, there's wilderness. The wilderness is unexplored, kind of like being in the Underdark, being in the underground, that dungeon portion. It talks about how there's a will that works against you. When you read a Jack Vance book or The Heart of Three Lions, and you read how chaos and all this is interacting with the world around you, it seems like there's a being, a presence, a spiritual nature to this that's working against you. And that is, I think, a very keen part of what makes the world interesting. The floral and fauna might be against you in some way, not because they're evil, but because, well, they may not even understand why they're against you. It could be predator prey. It could be something else. And I think that's interesting. If you really look into it in like alien worlds, and the fact that not everything is our morality, I think that is interesting. So let's get into some of the stuff and how you can incorporate this into your world. And then maybe I'll come back and talk more about how the world is interesting later in the video. Okay, so you are in an area. It's a precisely unexplored area. That means that man has not been there. Orc has not been there. Intelligent bipedal humanoids have not been there. Maybe the water levels of oceans or rivers or something of that nature are being drained. Maybe there's some sort of cataclysmic event that has caused this. And now you have this area that is never been walked on. Maybe there's a sunken ship in there, and now you are literally going out in this floodplain essentially to explore a ship. Maybe there are creatures that live in there that don't interact with surface dwellers, and that's a whole new thing. Maybe this floodplain area is not permanent. Maybe it's temporary. Maybe in 6 hours, this water is going to come back, and you only have 6 hours to capture whatever you're going to capture or to procure whatever you're going to procure. There's a lot of really interesting things with that type of thing that I think that could be really cool. Maybe an eruption or a earthquake has happened and has opened an area of the earth, exposing some sort of catacombs or whatever that no one has been to for a very long time. You go there and do not recognize the writing. This is an unknown culture, an unknown world to you at least, and there's no map of it. Maybe this is a vastly wild place. Maybe the earth is hollow, as in some of the Hollowed Earth books, and this is completely a foreign landscape with dinosaurs and everything of that. Oh my, craziness. That's how they kind of saw the world back then, with these natural obstructions that might be removed, whether it's water or a rock or the earth splits or something like that. Maybe there's some sort of unknown dangers. Maybe the earth splits and this gas comes out and everything that goes into the gas dies. And now you have an unknown area because the gas has dissipated over however many years. And now who knows what's there? Everything was just gone. Everything human or whatever, gone. Isn't that interesting? Something like that could happen. And then your party, you as a people, would be there. Maybe you do something to prevent the gas from coming out, and that's why you're there. Maybe this gas is from an alien vessel that has come in. Kind of like, was it Barrier Peaks with the S3 or something like that? I could probably get my module wrong. Where basically you have a spaceship that's crashed into the side of a mountain. Completely unknown to anyone there. Just because no intelligent being has been there doesn't mean that maybe things don't live there, if that makes sense. Maybe there are bipedal, humanoid, intelligent beings. They're just not from around here, and they don't interact with you. So you have to somehow interact with them or befriend them or enslave them, capture them, trade information with them so you can get some sort of vein of ore that they don't care about, but you do. Find the sunk pirate ship or fight the horde of creatures that love glittery things or something. I don't know. This is your... Okay, so let's say you're in this area. You find this thing and you now have to flee. Something has happened. The Temple of Doom is collapsed around you. You've never been in this part. You're now exploring by force because you have to find a way out, and the way you came in is not available to you. Now you have to flee as fast as you possibly can. That tells a big story. I think that is a bit tropey, but I think that there's lots of ways, there's lots of movies where this has been used, and you can see how something like that could occur, especially if you're dealing with anything sci-fi. Lever gets pulled and a door opens and now you're like, nope. Maybe it's not an explosion or a flood or lava or a big boulder that you have to run away from. Maybe you open the door and there's, a gateway to another world, and little Lamars, I think they're called, the least devils that you can find on the 9th layer of hell. The little Mars guys come pouring out like a puddle, not very quickly, but they are endless and you have to somehow get away from them. And there's a few winged ones in there that you have to really be careful of and get away from them too. Maybe this is a forgotten area. Maybe you go into a dungeon, you find a new passageway that takes you into some sort of hidden pass, and you find an ancient city where non-intellect or intellectual flora starts to be predatory towards you. Maybe the fauna there is asleep and you wake it, and now there's a problem. Maybe there's a ghost ship that blows in from the coastline that then has to be questioned. Where did this come from? What does it want? Does it have a will? Does this actually have a want? Is there things piloting this ship? Or is this just nature blowing a ship in? Sending the party out to this, exploring that fairly small vessel, assumingly, could be quite epic. Maybe inside there it leads to some greater story that takes you farther out into the ocean. Maybe that's what it is. Maybe no man's gone there because it's an ocean and we don't generally travel the ocean. So you're having to use the stars to navigate. And that brings in a whole new thing. Maybe this is an abandoned location. Maybe that there was a civilization that was on the side of a cliff and no one's been on that side of the cliff for a long time. Or, you go through the hidden passageway and there's a castle or a temple on the other side. And you're like, whoa, wait a second. Maybe there's a tower that just magically appears one day. And the reality is, it's always been there. It's just the magic finally faded that kept it concealed. And now you have to decide how to get it and what can you take from it. And if the magic is gone because the wizard's dead, all the better, right? But what if he's not? What if he just was rendered unconscious or whatever, and he comes back looking for his stuff? Oof. Maybe you find a set of ruins, and you have to try and decide, can this be rebuilt? Maybe that was your gift. Maybe you reached 9th level, you did a bunch of quests for a guy, and the guy was like, hey, the white stone ruins outside of Willowwood. You now are the lord of those ruins. And you're like, oh, ruins, yay. But then you realize, wait a second, there's loot here. There's unexplored areas. There are creatures here who don't care about loot that are guarding this area. And if I were to eliminate that and then establish myself as lord, I would have actually a thing to pull from my own campaign potentially. Now, let's go into sort of the last group of things. Maybe there's no current information on it because no one's been out there for a long time. Maybe some sort of religious cult came through and eliminated all the text, burned books, destroyed things. Maybe there's a great war. Maybe the burning of the Alexandrian library affected the knowledge of this area. Maybe the only actual knowledge of this area are held by the guilds or the bandits that live out there. Or maybe you have to go talk to the orcs to try and figure out what they know. Now, their understanding of what's out there might be different than yours. And you might have to be a little bit of like, oh, that means this. That probably means that. And then figure it out. Maybe they're a less intelligent version of orcs than we're used to. And they just kind of grunt. And you have to kind of guess. Maybe that's what happened. Maybe some sort of fog went over a forest, a purple fog, potentially, that changes the way people think and look at things, making it so that they get lost easily and they can't complete tasks. And they randomly switch directions and they don't like to necessarily stick around with each other because why would they? And the only people that can actually help them are this group of semi-intelligent to fairly intelligent native people. And what you find out, maybe by random or maybe because you befriend them, is that they like tea And if you just drink their tea, their ritualistic tea, the tea cures the feeble mind spell while you're there and you're able to actually get things done. Maybe that's how it works. Maybe it's going to some remote place like Bilbo Baggins where, yeah, there's intelligent things there. They don't speak your language and you're traveling a nation into it or more. And yeah, you have no maps of it because your people haven't been within hundreds of miles of where you're going. And like I said, your people don't talk to their people. And the people that they do talk to don't know how to read and write maps. Maybe there are so many different locations that are unknown and unexplored because they're not secret, but because they haven't been found. Not because they're lost, but because you're in a city with a bunch of doors and you don't go through all of them. So they just get uninhabited. You know, maybe the population was 3 million people, but now it's 500. Maybe some sort of apocalypse came and you're in the tail end of it. There's not necessarily enemies in every corner. There are some. But whatever is there is gone. And there's all these things around you, all these rooms, floors, buildings. And there's just nothing. Think of like a zombie apocalypse movie without the zombies. I mean, there's some, but not like the apocalypse level zombies. You know, what do you do? How does that work? What would that look like? You know, in book 3 of the Little Brown books, in the original core books, as I call it, it talks about when a referee puts the game up. It's good to have wilderness with some sort of story, a village, and a dungeon. The dungeon should be at least 3 levels, preferably 6 to 12 for like a mega dungeon, so you have places for the party to go. Wilderness is not really something that a lot of people thought people should go to until about 3rd level because it's harder. You're expected to have henchmen, maybe a small army by the time you did it because there was like 3 to 30 orcs, for example, or, you know, if you really took the numbers, 330 to 300 orcs. Now, obviously, it's easy to get away from that. And it does say in there that the party shouldn't be forced to fight things that are too great for them. However, the expectation is if you pick the wrong fight, you are going to die. So if you try to fight 300 orcs and you were a party of 5, you're pretty much dead regardless. However, 1 dragon is too much for most parties. And those were all over the place. It also made reference in the Outdoor Survival board game that this should be a thing that was used when you're playing this game. You know, Outdoor Survival is made by Avalon Hill. It's not even the same company that made Dungeons & Dragons. That was TSR. But in Outdoor Survival, they had bastions, they had outposts, they had specific areas that were good for hunting, they had specific areas that had water with rivers, lakes, they had deserts, swamps, mountains, different movement. How you move through there could be vastly different. In original Dungeons & Dragons, they had the same type of thing. They had castles. And as you approached the castle, there was a chance that whoever lived there would come out to meet you. And it could be friend or foe, and you wouldn't necessarily know that until they came out. They had a whole different set of rules for duels, where you could duel the lord of the castle. And if you won, he'd give you like 3 months worth of stay there and fresh horses if you needed it when you left. And he'd pay for your food and meals. And if you lost, other things could happen. Well, that incorporates rules from chainmail. You know, another big difference is they talk about the hexagons in Outdoor Survival being a little over 3 miles. They were 5 kilometers each. In Dungeons & Dragons, they refer to them as being between 5 and 8 miles, depending on how far people traveled and whatnot. So when you're looking at these bastions and everything, it kind of makes sense. You know, the guards with the retainers at the castle, you kind of get an idea maybe from posting the signs, religious symbols that might be, who might be in there. I think it ranged wildly from mythology to medieval, with chimeras and heroes, to high fantasy and low fantasy, with, you know, treants and ogres, and then more like Conan type stuff, the sword and sorcery. But when you look into these old versions of the wilderness, you start to find things also with sci fi. You have white apes, you have deserts that are very much like you would expect from Mars, you know, from John Carter. So these John Carter like deserts and worlds and this type of stuff are vastly different than what people use today. However, this was what they used to describe it. They talked about this and people just knew because that was the books they read. So I think if you pull from the books you read today, the Harry Potters, the Game of Thrones, the Westeros, the pick your poison. I think you're going to find the things you're wanting and you're going to make for a very interesting thing. I know this has gone a little bit jumbled and wonky, and I hope you can forgive me. There's so much to say in here that I didn't even really get to it. I'm trying not to make this into like an hour-long video just on this. Anyways, guys, I hope you guys like this. I'm going to have another video like this coming out still. We're going to have a lot more spell videos coming out, so look for those. Hope you guys enjoyed it. See you guys in the next one. Keep rolling those dice. Bye.